Imagine coming home after a long day, expecting peace, and instead hearing words that flip your entire life upside down. She looks you dead in the eye and says, "From now on, intimacy happens only when I say so." No explanation, no emotion, like she's already moved on. At first you think it's just a phase, until you start noticing the signs, secret texts, nights out, new outfits she never wore for you. And then it hits you. You're not her partner anymore. You're her backup plan. But here's the twist. What if you didn't wait around? What if you left first and made her regret ever thinking she could play you? Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watch this video from. Now, let's get started. After a demanding day at work, I stepped into the house expecting nothing out of the ordinary. An uneventful evening filled with dinner, a bit of television, and possibly an early night. No heavy discussions, no conflicts, just the familiar, quiet routine. But something was off the moment I entered. My wife sat rigidly on the couch, arms crossed, her eyes locked onto the television with an unsettling focus, as though bracing herself for something unpleasant. I greeted her, but the response was barely there. Assuming she was in one of her distant moods, I didn't push the matter. I went through the usual motions, changed into something comfortable, sat down for dinner, until she finally broke the silence. Her voice was steady, devoid of warmth. "I need to make something clear." I looked up, waiting. "From now on, intimacy will only happen on my terms, when I want it, not when you do." There was no anger in her tone, no sadness, just a cold, practiced delivery, as though she had rehearsed these words in her mind long before speaking them aloud. I sat frozen, stunned into silence. Had something happened? Was she upset with me? What had led to this sudden proclamation? Yet, she offered no further explanation, her gaze never straying from the television, as though this conversation was nothing more than a formality. "Where is this coming from?" I finally asked. She shrugged. "I just don't want to feel pressured anymore." That word struck me. Pressured? I had never imposed anything on her. I had always respected her space, her moods, her boundaries, and yet somehow I had been cast as the problem. I leaned back, struggling to make sense of her words. "So, just to be sure I understand," I said slowly, "you make all the decisions, and I have no say." She nodded, still avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, that's how it's going to be." I should have been angry, maybe even heartbroken. But more than anything, I was confused. This wasn't a small adjustment. It was a complete shift in the foundation of our marriage. And the way she presented it, without any discussion or concern for my feelings, made it clear that my opinion didn't matter. She wasn't asking for a compromise. She was dictating new rules. That's when a thought surfaced, one I didn't want to acknowledge but couldn't ignore. Was there someone else? It was the only explanation that made sense. The sudden emotional detachment, the way she was laying down the law as if she had already moved on. It felt like she was establishing a new reality where I was no longer an equal, just an observer. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, so I let it be. Maybe she was dealing with something personal. Maybe I was misinterpreting things. But deep down, I already knew. I had seen this before. And the biggest warning sign? She wasn't afraid of losing me. A woman who still loves her husband, even in a difficult phase, would try to reassure him, to explain, to soften the blow. But she didn't. She simply declared the new terms and expected me to accept them without resistance. That night, I barely slept. The conversation played over and over in my head as I searched for a logical explanation. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe this was just a rough patch. But deep inside, I already understood the truth. When a woman no longer cares whether you stay or leave, she's already gone. The only real question left was whether there was another man waiting in the background or if I was just being kept around as a backup. In the days that followed, Everything on the surface remained the same. We didn't argue. We followed the same routines. But for me, everything felt different. She carried on as if nothing had changed, scrolling through her phone in the morning, going to work, coming home to sit in front of the TV. There was no awkwardness from her side, no hesitation. It was as if that conversation had never even happened. But I couldn't unsee the shift. Subtle signs began revealing themselves, things I hadn't noticed before. The way she was constantly glued to her phone, angling the screen away from me. The new outfits, tighter, more revealing, clothes I had never seen her wear before. The late-night outings with vague explanations that never quite added up. I wasn't searching for proof, but it was right in front of me. At home, everything felt transactional. We spoke when necessary, but the warmth was gone. She had no interest in meaningful conversations. If I asked about her day, her answers were clipped, minimal. If I suggested making plans together, she dismissed the idea, claiming exhaustion. Yet, that exhaustion didn't stop her from going out, dressed up, staying out late. And when she returned, there was no guilt, no explanation, just the quiet expectation that I wouldn't question it. That's when I knew for certain. She hadn't just drifted away emotionally. She had already checked out mentally. I started testing small things just to see how deep this detachment ran. One evening, I casually suggested taking a trip together, something to reconnect, to reset things. Her response? A shrug. No enthusiasm, no interest. And that was all the confirmation I needed. Not a flicker of enthusiasm. No forced grin, no reluctant nod of agreement. It was as though I had proposed an obligation rather than a reprieve. Something to endure instead of something to savor. And then there was the distance, not the physical kind, but a gap far more profound. She had drawn an invisible boundary and never strayed, adhering to a set of unspoken rules as if they were carved in stone. Any warmth that once existed between us had long since dissipated. No spontaneous embraces, no effortless laughter, no lingering touches exchanged in passing. Even the lightest contact, a hand resting on her shoulder, my fingers grazing hers, made her stiffen as if I were an unwelcome trespasser. Yet, despite the growing emotional chasm, she stayed. That was the part that didn't fit. If she had already detached, why remain? Why not sever ties and walk away? The answer wasn't love. It wasn't devotion. It was convenience. The lease was in her name, but I was the one ensuring the bills were paid, the fridge stayed full, and the little luxuries she never acknowledged always remained within reach. I was the silent force keeping everything running smoothly. She wasn't staying because she wanted to. She was staying because it required no effort, because I made her life comfortable. She had crafted the ideal scenario, a life where she could act as if she were unattached while enjoying the financial stability of a relationship. I wasn't her priority. I was her safety net, a contingency plan in case her other prospects didn't pan out. And once I saw it for what it was, I couldn't pretend otherwise. Every action, every disinterested glance, every excuse made it excruciatingly clear. She wasn't just detached. She was biding her time. Not for me, but for something, or someone, else. That realization shifted everything. I started watching, not from insecurity, but for confirmation. And it didn't take long. Her phone was never beyond reach. At night, I'd wake to see her in bed, her face bathed in the glow of the screen, fingers tapping out messages. If I leaned too close, the screen would go dark in an instant. One evening, as I sat beside her on the couch, I caught a glimpse of a conversation before she angled the phone away. It wasn't casual banter. There was an ease, an intimacy in the exchange that only comes with something more than friendship. Then came the sudden departures. Where we once coordinated our days together, she now had an endless string of engagements. Drinks with friends, work events, impromptu girls' nights that somehow always fell on weekends. And each time she left, she transformed. Not just a change in wardrobe, but an entire shift in demeanor. Perfume she never wore for me. Makeup applied with meticulous precision. Outfits carefully chosen, none of which she ever bothered with at home. She was dressing to impress, but not for me. At first, I dismissed my suspicions, told myself I was reading too much into it. Maybe she truly was just out with friends. But the truth has a way of surfacing, and one evening, it did. Another supposed girls' night, another vague excuse recycled from previous weeks. I had stopped questioning it. I already knew honesty wouldn't be part of the answer. But then she made a mistake. Her laptop, usually closed, sat open on the dining table. I wasn't searching for anything. I was simply moving it aside when the screen lit up. A message appeared. It wasn't from a friend. It wasn't about work. It was from him. No elaborate declarations, no secret rendezvous, just a simple, "Can't wait to see you tonight." That was all it took. I didn't dig further. I didn't need to. The truth had been staring me down for weeks. She wasn't waiting for me to leave. She was waiting for him to be ready. I had never been a partner. I was a placeholder. And in that moment, my decision was made. There would be no argument, no confrontation, no plea for an explanation I already possessed. What would be the point? Her choice had been made long before that message ever appeared. The only thing left was ensuring that when I left, it would be on my terms. The irony of it all was almost amusing. She had no clue that I knew. No inkling that the comfort and security she had taken for granted were about to disappear. There would be no dramatic breakup, no messy fallout, just a departure she never saw coming. The next morning, I woke before her. I made coffee, sat at the table, and started laying out my plan. Every step. How much cash to withdraw, which accounts to separate, which personal belongings to take. I would leave nothing behind that could be used as leverage. No ties, no unfinished business. She moved through her morning as if it were any other day, barely acknowledging me, her attention fixed on her phone, lost in whatever conversation held her interest. I simply observed. She truly believed she had it all under control. For the rest of that week, I moved in silence. Bit by bit, I shifted my finances into a new account. I secured a temporary spot to stay, just a brief stopover until I could establish myself somewhere more lasting. Quietly and methodically, I removed my essentials, documents, valuables, piece by piece, ensuring she wouldn't notice their absence. Each time she stepped out to meet her friends, I inched closer to my final departure. By the time the moment arrived, I had already detached myself emotionally. No sadness, no hesitation, just the satisfaction of knowing she had no inkling of what was coming. And then, I left. She was gone again, likely with him. That was my signal. I collected the last of my belongings, taking only the necessities, and left my keys on the kitchen counter. No note, no farewell, nothing. For too long, she had treated me as an afterthought, a placeholder until she was ready to move forward. So, I made the choice for her. I left first. Hours later, my phone vibrated. Once, twice, again. I ignored it. Then the messages started. At first, they were straightforward. "Where are you? Did you take your things?" But soon, the panic set in. "What's going on? We need to talk." I just smiled. There was nothing left to say. She had assumed she had unlimited time to figure things out, to keep me waiting while she secured her next move. She misjudged. The house, still under her name. The bills, her responsibility now. The stability she had enjoyed with my presence. Gone. Eventually, the calls and texts stopped. When silence finally settled in, I knew she had grasped the truth. She was never the one in control. I was. And the quiet that followed was the most satisfying part. With no more messages, no desperate attempts to reel me back in, I knew she had finally accepted that I wasn't returning. That was all I needed. I adjusted to my new space quickly. It wasn't luxurious, but it was mine. No more strained silences, No more underlying tension, just peace. And for the first time in a long while, I felt free. I didn't waste time reminiscing about her. I had already grieved the relationship while still living in it. By the time I walked away, there was nothing left to mourn. I focused on rebuilding, revisiting old hobbies, reconnecting with friends, and learning to enjoy my own company without feeling like a shadow in someone else's life. But, as I had expected, she resurfaced. Not directly, of course. That wasn't her style. She made sure I noticed. The new guy. Our mutual friends brought him up in conversation, unaware that I already knew. He was younger, more ostentatious, the type who thrived on attention rather than depth. The kind she had likely daydreamed about while still with me. I felt nothing. Let her have him. Let her believe she had traded up. I had no interest in watching the show unfold, but life has a way of revealing the truth. It didn't take long for the cracks in her perfect picture to appear. At first, it was minor complaints, how he was always out with his friends, how she didn't feel like a priority. Then, the real issues surfaced. Financial struggles, constant conflicts. She had exchanged stability for something superficial, and it was clear she wasn't handling it well. And then, the inevitable happened. She had assumed she was replacing me with someone better. Instead, she had been replaced. The moment she expected him to step up, to contribute, to be reliable, he did exactly what I knew he would. He disappeared. No conversation, no confrontation, just gone. She had counted on me staying while she made up her mind. She had assumed he would stay too, but he had no reason to. She wasn't his priority, just a temporary amusement. And now, with him out of the picture, she was left with nothing. I didn't reach out. I didn't gloat. I simply waited, knowing exactly what would happen next. And, predictably, it wasn't long before she made her move. Her safety net had vanished. The man she had pinned her hopes on had walked away the moment she became inconvenient. With overdue bills piling up and no one left to rescue her, she did the only thing she could think of. She reached out to me. One afternoon, her name appeared on my screen. "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at the message, then laughed. Of course. Of course she thought she could just waltz back into my life as if nothing had changed. As if I had been waiting for her to decide. I ignored it. A few days later, another message arrived. "I've been thinking a lot about everything. I think we should talk in person." This time, I responded. "About what?" She hesitated before replying. "I just feel like we ended things too fast. I miss you." For a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Near miss. Instead of answering directly, I shot back, "Do you miss me, or do you miss not paying rent?" She didn't reply right away. When she finally did, her response was weak, a flimsy attempt to act like money had nothing to do with it. "It's not about that," she insisted. I almost laughed out loud. That was rich. She liked to call them mistakes. I agreed to meet, not because I was considering anything, but because I was curious to see just how bad things had gotten for her. And the moment she sat down across from me, it was written all over her face. She looked exhausted, uneasy. The effortless confidence she used to carry had vanished. She tried starting with small talk, pretending she cared about how I'd been. I wasn't interested. "What do you want?" I cut in. She exhaled sharply. I miss you. I think we ended things too soon. Maybe we should—" I couldn't hold it in. I laughed. Loud, unfiltered. People around us turned to look. She tensed. "What's so funny?" she asked. Wiping away an invisible tear, I smirked. "You think we ended too soon?" "That's hilarious." She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. "I'm being serious." "Oh, I know," I said, my grin unwavering. "That's what makes it so damn funny." Her face darkened. "You don't have to be an asshole." I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice but keeping my words razor sharp. "Oh no, sweetheart. You don't get to play the victim here." I let the moment stretch just long enough before delivering the real blow. So, tell me, when exactly did you start missing me? When the bills started stacking up? When your rebound ditched you? When you realized you weren't as irreplaceable as you thought? Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. I shook my head. You assumed you had better options. You thought you were trading up, but turns out you were just a placeholder for him, the same way you tried to make me. Leaning back, I let the smirk linger. And now, you're nothing. She dropped her gaze to the table, blinking rapidly, as if willing herself not to cry. I felt nothing. Standing, I tossed a few bills onto the table. Hope you can make rent, I said. I hear your mom's couch is free. Then I walked away. Later I found out exactly what I had expected. She ended up back at her mother's place, working a cashier job at some grocery store, the kind she used to sneer at. Meanwhile, I moved forward, happier than ever. She thought I'd be her safety net. Turns out, she never had one to begin with. This story has come to an end. Life is a series of choices, and every action has consequences. This story illustrates how a lack of sincerity, manipulation, and selfishness can destroy relationships. Love is about mutual respect, support, and appreciation, not convenience and calculation. When one partner stops valuing the other and the relationship turns into a cold transaction, separation becomes inevitable. True strength is not in revenge, but in the ability to walk away with dignity and no regrets. It's crucial to recognize whether someone is truly by your side or merely using you as a temporary convenience. Real freedom lies in knowing your own worth. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you liked this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.